변단이 가ring외了许切不是让民度，因那样，但就是其他事情啊做远了，省了明年公家的一切，你什么你不的，但俺当初没忙不及了，但俺当初苍嘛了，刚刚去彻底我是的，俺啷没恰上许为那样，你这点说的是，省上落了，俺这来的，那你马几不来的，热我拉的。生抽的，你叔叔几部的去，出面开讲的出纳，叔叔几部出面开讲的，孤独是咯，第一操来的，但第二动力看这些我也是，第段是你也是，
Now, as to the sequence of these two objects of meditation, it actually doesn't matter which one comes first and which one comes after. But Rinpoche would like today, we would like to start today talking about the foundation of mindfulness of the mind, to talk about meditation on the mind for about, well, a little over an hour. Rinpoche wants to talk for more than an hour on meditating on the mind. And then the second topic Rinpoche would like to discuss is based on the fact that all of us have similar problems in the sense, well, we can probably say everyone really has this problem. Problems with, for instance, or has certain problems. So problems such as anxiety, experiencing fear and anxiety, feeling unhappy and depressed, feeling despair, feeling kind of
但
the
当我
mind
我
is
说
mixed up,
生了
and
明年光
loneliness.
马这位
We
空的
experience
了，
loneliness.
但卡上当打的书吧，加些为那打的书吧咯，真的，起码你出差不的，第一个说俺说五了明年公家当。六了明年公家去许不的，他的工作是价位高了，俺当部的公家位，去的西古多，他的西年公交的讲了，数了，公家位军人南路了，条忙不连过的，都不连过的，杨吉马地我听着连源有，他的来去的讲了，条当，他那先给马地我来的出车的，也还追人去呢。是吧？他越南路协会呢，属于拉玛扎了电些些呢，你公交当的，他妈拉面嘛是老了，你这公司些些呢，什么是老的？第西边前年，你公交的居人南路了，这边空的，那阵提出车的，你拉玛来呀，输给去，你拉面提了嘛，头送给去，然后比些南路了，开始送把提出车的蛮多是，送嘛了短给去，等这去。公交，你刚刚车位的说吧，设计去呢，都是些呢，呃，但拉玛次年的电不起去，罗马次年的电不起了，拉玛了库朗基，公交娘娘开始全部地边，娘娘马蹄打不起去，娘娘盘都是短些都是人追求的，的，配了那俺们呢，还来呗，大数进步，拉年了大家听着吃的个，的但呢，手机拼图进步重要的。别让路基本上忙不永远的，我顶着吃不着啊。
So, therefore, having all of us experiencing these problems, such as loneliness, despair, and so forth, Rinpoche will talk about how we can overcome these problems. Now, until now, well, Rinpoche has taught two sessions. Rinpoche has talked about the breath, he's talked about meditating on the body. Now, first of all, Rinpoche needed to talk about how to meditate. So, having talked about this, having spoken about the different levels, the different sequences of meditation, well, questions arise. Once you start to meditate yourself, you'll have questions, you'll have doubts. There may also be some kind of discomfort. So these are all aspects that need to be discussed. These are all parts of meditations that should be discussed. Now, in the olden days, in the past, in Tibet, practitioners would usually have a lama, a spiritual master, who would first give a teaching, then the disciple would gain an understanding of what the lama said and apply the teachings directly, kind of sit down to meditate. And when they had any questions, any doubts, they could approach the Lama directly and ask what they can do. And in response to their questions, then the Lama would explain, would tell the disciple what is said in the scriptures and so forth. So in that way, it was a very direct way of overcoming questions or overcoming doubts and problems and having questions answered. Now, here the Lama was also someone who was experienced, who was qualified. So this is how it was done in the past, and that proved to be extremely effective in terms of great practitioners of great intensive practice being undertaken by many Tibetans in the past, and that produced a lot of great practitioners. That kind of approach of this exchange between the Lama and the disciple. So directly being able to address certain issues, directly being able to ask questions, overcome doubts, and so forth.
다 디인디 넘버 2 가상 단진다 티니기 린디다 아니 넘버 2 수수 나랑라 공제비 카토디라 미세기 강에 친구스들이 저 친구들에게 중요해 나왔다.
So yesterday, yesterday, that is during the last 2 sessions, all of you have meditated. And so I want to know, did you have any major questions when it came to your meditation? Was there anything you'd like to ask? If you have any questions, please type them into the chat. If you have any questions, please type them. You may want to do this in English if you don't know Chinese, but please keep it short and simple. And then I'm sure someone will translate the question. But it's good to keep it short and simple.
당근에 지나 뒤쪽에 좀 보고 도 아니면 인가 마트야지. 주제 주된 요인은 르르치 아니 가서 마싱이라 뒤쪽에 당니시바 닌킨 소야 tilatusu 마인바 레간 두고에 진두고 있으면 뒤쪽에 니만 인가 요인은 아니 자동기 동기 주동기 동기 신이 되는 건 이거로 다 디자인 미상만 뒤쪽에 자치 뭐 쇼차지시네 先看了就是有的年轻了没，年轻了有的先看了没，那个了有就是的哈雷比，考不下去的，觉得无聊怎么办？但第几档意思个呗，无聊时代的无聊时代第什么的起码的，比如讲那结尾呢，就是马去也是的起咯，然后的讲了，就是马接马特别说的，听得下来的无聊是嘛的呗，你们没不知道的。
Actually, the best way to answer your questions, to respond to your doubts and so forth, would be to make a lot of time. That we spent 6, 7 hours together. So for all of us, basically, to get together, the Lama as well as those listening to the teachings. However, that is difficult because, usually, only, of course, this is only possible if you don't have any important work. So we could get together, drink some tea, drink some water. Unfortunately, nowadays that is quite unrealistic because either the Lama has time, but the disciple doesn't, or the student doesn't. And if the student has time, the Lama doesn't, or neither has time. So it's really difficult nowadays to find the time. Uliao, is there's an expression in Chinese? Uliao, which seems to mean like there's not enough time. It's hard to find the right time. So Rinpoche said, doesn't it mean that we just don't have enough time? It doesn't. It's just not enough time basically to do anything. Boring. In English, it's boring actually, 无聊. Alle. Oh, so 无聊 actually means it's kind of boring. We get bored with meditating. That's really the Chinese translator explains the meaning of this expression.
没有兴趣的意思是吧？但电影呢，公家给团体了拼读卡图斯，你拼读卡的用啥的，叔叔给随便找个卡去用途去的，你光嘛就能军能行，能引起希望的当，国外希望的当，卡人对那卡的起，是吧？强你准的强，年你准的年，你卡的起你作为那个现在卡的对那他让起呢，当不赢呢，你叔叔的卡的起拼多。第了，就是了，牛巴卡的用过多，看到生了当真马这个人呢，叔叔了他妈的穷卡的那个多，生了真正找不起数年，你当真今年什么点不赢呢？基本卡的用人多，我第代几十年呢，公家了，音乐不随有的是，顶这几个年，嗯。
Now, with regard to how can we overcome that sense of feeling bored when meditating and instead kind of develop this interest, this kind of in Tibetan it's like ing kind of means like a special interest, like really wanting to do this. So how can you develop this? Well, first of all, we need to understand what is the benefit of meditating. What are the benefits? How does it help us when we meditate? This needs to be analyzed. This is something we should investigate. And on the other hand, what are the disadvantages? What are the disadvantages if our mind is scattered, if our mind is distracted, when it goes all over, when we allow for it to just run wild, to think about this, to think about that, to daydream and so forth. So if without any control, we allow our mind to go here and there and everywhere, what are the disadvantages of such a lack of control? And what are the advantages of controlling the mind? We are able to develop the wish to actually meditate, the wish to sit down for meditation, sit down to meditate.
嗯嗯，就是了，这边进步就业不通俗呢，这边有个短大的主要了，硬那个话，土囊那个是，
So whatever we do, if there's anything like any activity, when we understand that, what are the benefits? When we understand the advantages, when we understand how it
他的
benefits
我
us,
的
then
了，
we actually generate that kind
不
of
有空
interest.
闲容易睡着。
We
他的
generate some kind of
书不给年
liking.
当个托年，用个多门多，第几大过几个罗，咱明白了这些提起性，他一体下过的么，一体是那个，一体，嗯，明白了这些题，这些的。但苏布给年当个托呢，那这算着顶这个经济，马英不接，苏布地当英不接，你苏苏个，理路，是吧？理路兴旺的球，你大那些个兴旺的球，那个今年嘛着理路兴旺的球呢，都是年了高啊，你库的刚了，可能你库的地我就要了，地了恰起呢，你库了，我考试了为那地兴旺的球呢，你忙不来呀？当你来的来了不恰个为呢？他。你个希望都去不赢呢，专注起么当路送药的，你让人给他专注爬线给卡多了呀，那个多，他地主上么几百的，你个希望都去不当，列路希望都去不赢呢，叔叔了，你把卡去用个月吧，居然卡的用个月吧，但你个希望的那个卡的结尾呢，来那供了吐面吧是，你学进步当，来那供了吐面吧，来卡的结呢，来个卡的结尾呢，你不要嘛的是的，列路学进步强。你过去就等着吃呗，那个咱们吃也没法的。俺就看见经济呢，过年去你说，阳过年去你说， 가뒤 차 마사 하고만 다 근데 지진에니 간데 차를 마사 지진 니 구고에 만년고에 근데 차고도 지나고 주주 니버스 뭐 차윤디 신 근데 순리지 디 공시 배 도자자 얘기 인가 요래 그래서 디 인디가라 오다但你 测定起的 库古了 미스 수불로 고야기 니 测定起的 库古了 주주 된지 디네 차비 지라 디긴 당겨다 다 민박인 딘데지 쿠고르세 민박 세딩이 뒤쇠지 샤그로 딘데지 쿠지지네 수불은 당겨 당사비 질 언니 가야기 더시지 니 마요한기 칼라뇽도 당야 아니 내가 제바 내가 세딩 제바 있는 수수의 핀도 가려 용주여 봐 디소 상了当 다나 신기 센了 쪼레기 제도 오니 표현 전과들이 배는 아주 종의 지티와 있는 종치 딘데진 오시로 공비든 저거를 지뭐 공비든 저거를 아니 배 된다 인다 멤버 리버다 니버 수순제 투약이 뉴버디 슈진 저거를 디 랑신 참말로 핀버디 디 조용 거라 디 톤치 거라现在 딘데상 당니 니 가고 그랬어 음
I don't know what the question was, but just remember just answer. It seems the question is, well, how much should we rest? How much should we sleep, for instance? So how much should we sleep and so forth? How much should we take a rest? How much is too much? And so Rinpoche said, well, with regard to this, we should ask a doctor. We should ask a physicist who knows, for instance, if you have a disease, how much you should rest, how much you should sleep, and so forth. But we should look out for laziness, like feeling lazy, for instance. That is a huge problem. For instance, feeling lazy to such a degree that we develop a kind of attachment towards sleep. We really like to sleep. Of course, we experience when we sleep or before we fall asleep, we experience some kind of well-being. And it's possible that we become attached to this kind of the pleasure of sleep. And that's many of the texts. So, for instance, Shantideva's Bodhisattva Way of Life, or for instance, in the Great Lamrim, you find the explanation of the benefits of joyous effort. So, in those texts, they warn us of this kind of laziness, of that kind of attachment to sleep, and we need to understand how it harms us. If we have this laziness, this lack of kind of joy in engaging in certain activities, well, then whatever action, whatever activity we engage in, it lacks any kind of potential. So this is what the scriptures say, that whatever we do, it lacks potential, it lacks a force that enables us to be successful. So if we get used to sleeping all the time, to nodding off, for instance, well, then when we recite our prayers, we fall asleep all the time. We nod off the whole time. And it's possible that you continue with your prayers, with your practice all night, and you never know where you got to, because in the meanwhile, while reciting your prayers, you've fallen asleep. And that's a huge problem if we get into this habit, if we develop this habit of nodding off, of sleeping too much. Of course, it's important to sleep soundly, to have a good night's sleep, sleeping for 7 or 8 hours. That is important. However, at the same time, it's also important that we check how much we need to sleep, that we eat less food, we don't eat too much, so that we don't feel kind of lazy and so forth. What is extremely important is to understand the benefits of any kind of action. Because if we understand the benefits of meditation, for instance, of practicing, then we'll generate joy. We will joyfully engage in meditation. We will joyfully do our practice. So it's important to investigate first, what are the advantages? This is true also with regard to other activities. So, for instance, to compose something, to write something, to write a book or anything else. So when we do that, it will help our understanding. It will help our wisdom. It will help us to develop, cultivate certain qualities that are very beneficial, which is why engaging in these activities, having understood their advantage, it may become easier and we do it without laziness, but instead with interest, with a liking for it, and with a sense of joy.
咱们领地上路了，种植，说他给他有个这步，种植也不，卡出是，原本那的，他的专注的，这步恰的过来。아니 다 나시 리루기 니버디 가야 마제시 네데 딜은 제부 상문 디트엔스에 지요 말에 딜레 도디 단도 리루드 니코에디 슈치치 지지치메네 탄나베 수수기 사고에게 칼라야 사마투에 수르시 저 칼라사야 레가 수르시 통해야다 뒤에 다다라 사마투야 아니 미사야 진베 딜레야 베 가소레 출 담미사야로 추지 랭고그레 안 추디 동고그레 모지 랭고그레 딜레가 또스 여러 또 딘데 진이 만든 것은 차시네 다 간도 수수수 녀버지기도 어디
Well, in this world, anyone who's successful is successful. So any kind of success is always the result of joyous effort. On the other hand, there's no one who's really successful if they're controlled by laziness. So laziness does not lead to any kind of success or any kind of positive result. And if we're extremely lazy, well, then we sleep too much. We probably forget to eat. We don't have the time to sleep, or we feel like it requires too much of an effort to eat food. We may not even take our medicine properly. It requires too much of an effort to actually get up and get a glass and get some water to be able to take our medicine. So the point is that laziness really harms us. Laziness has no positive qualities, but instead it harms us in the way just described.
那今天着急了，开始是心必须
Another
非常
question. There's
用
another
力才
question.
能抓紧所缘。的嘛的，非常用力的解决要嘛的，还讲个修不真起今年，没把讲了下下去，别还让我那家这孙子的钱你别，他说数不起的数空气今年，孙都是当起今年，没把那先修见的下，的这结果嘛的，先把略见下是咯，先略见的下呢，俺这嘛接不接，没把的。朗上三不见的下图嘛图给生产嘛接，朗上三不见的数据了下图嘛的。대지 샤투그래 라렌장 샤투그래 디장긴 지고르다 디장진 디니 디르 공디 때문에 있나 야도 지고르 디인디간라 미바 통만도 세딩한다 우이나 미바 세드 두고 에스케미도 우가랑스 칸니온디고 한니온디고 디다랑자제 디랑라 센르지 아니 야 용구도 마 동구도 아니 우추 무버스 그래 팀바 아니 우파 진버스 그래 파트나와디라 무 진버 어 무버당 진버스 그래 근데 르르진 시고에 계신 분이 하장 휴전이 뒤제주 매버리스 뒤제외나 공전이 마중이 찬도 그래 아니 공원에 야부 연구 말해
Now, the next question, well, I can only induce from Rinpoche's answer, but it seems that the person asked, is it a good idea to work really hard on meditating? And so Rinpoche's response was, well, we need to be careful to not do too much in the sense that we shouldn't stress ourselves out. It's very important to keep calm. So instead of breaking out in sweat, so in the sense that working so hard that in the end we end up getting so stressed out that we start sweating all over just to be able to meditate. That's not a healthy kind of approach. Instead, being calm, being relaxed is extremely important. And we shouldn't worry if, especially in the beginning, our object of meditation doesn't appear clearly. No one is able in the beginning to have a clear object of meditation, is able to hold the object in a clear way. No one can do that. So it's totally natural that it's difficult. We should just generate a rough sense of the object. And then from there, through practice, through continuous practice, the object will appear clearer and clearer to our mind. Now, with regard to the breath, it's a little different because we don't have to visualize our breathing. We don't need to imagine that we're breathing because we're breathing anyway. So all we need to do is observe the breath. We need to observe the movement of the breath as we breathe in and out. But being calm and relaxed is really important. Otherwise, if we don't stay calm and relaxed, we may not want to meditate, we lose our interest, and our meditation will not be successful.
大概10分钟左右开始推嘛，真的。第讲不出叔叔集中家的叔叔的长步迈不顺得起，年个人地步迈不恰用过，第讲不抗地今天下死，他上天给电的开心过的，教也总是脱节，你讲不多什么写个讲，那之前这么修电的，他今天找我顺得起，也讲运用公司也顺得起，刚第一节下不赢呢，是吧？第几个嘛的，刚不这不是个他推嘛子呢，刚不这个嘛的，
Sorry, I don't find the question right now, but I think it's about the posture. So the question is about what posture to adopt, I suppose. And Rinpoche said, well, if you can't sit cross-legged, that's okay. You could also sit in a kind of half cross-leg position where one leg is stretched, a kind of not all the way through, but almost completely stretched, and the other one is kind of bent inwards. So this would be the posture of Green Tara, who sits like with one leg bent and the other one slightly stretched out. So this position is also okay. You can adopt this position if that feels comfortable, if that feels right. So that.
刚嘛戏剧之间的都是人家民族，不如了刚不都是讲的这个咯。
And so the person probably apparently asked whether it's okay to do it for 40 minutes. So Rinpoche to meditate for 40 minutes, and Rinpoche said, well, that seems a little long. So it's okay to stretch your leg.
现在用的永久的，当先前呢，路的民族嘛，用了你给刚过你给切图嘛的，顺序用的呀，比如他是比如族那边用的嘞，西民族那边可能顺序的最就都给嘛些，的给没多。
So apparently the question is, what happens if a bird comes into my room, if a cat comes into my room, if there are external distractions? And so distractions. And so Rinpoche said, well, never mind. You don't have to pay attention to them. If a bird kind of comes into your room, if there's a cat that comes into your room, well, just ignore it. Just do your meditation. You don't need to be concerned about that. You don't need to pay attention to that. Should just stay focused.
找不到观修的实感，感觉不到自己进入修的状态。第传达的古马的是，俺那个叔叔新把去呢，刚公过的去呢，公的干嘛松，干嘛西，干嘛啊，刚公把的去呢，的确通通去，公的具体俺说卡森没些需要嘛的，但大家讲是那新年过年给嘛咯，卡里到底结尾呢这个是。但公别团结云彩的，让人进步难路了，社会是不是送多？但他的开始的长的工人把别给弄嘛的，的长期呢，社会是不是送有的？公的团的通通节，长个的忙不节，团的通通节过的，但他俺做了通通节呢也有的，干嘛送，干嘛啊，干嘛就通通节，的忙不节是吧？巴鲁了东北下，样苏不溜溜下的样起，溜溜起呢，讲的旅行那个，嗯，溜溜几多呢，是吧？relax 这个多，但溜溜几多呢？你公定估做我的，我的，
Now, I think the question is about the period of time we should spend in meditation. Now, Rinpoche said, well, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, or maybe 5 minutes. What is most important is to keep the mind calm and relaxed. So during that time, to not get uptight and so forth. Now, we haven't really spoken about, Rinpoche says, we haven't really talked about how long we should meditate. So in particular, when it comes to calm abiding, there may be more instructions on how long you should meditate. But in general, in terms of the period of time, like when you meditate during the meditation session, you'll find instructions, for instance, in the Great Lam Rim, Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, where he quotes Kamalashila's middling stages of meditation, which very clearly states that we should keep our meditation session short and meditate in such a way that we have many meditation sessions. So instead of having one long meditation session, we should have many short ones, keeping them short in the sense of having just 3 minutes, meditating for 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, keeping them short, and then repeatedly meditating.
在第五题的卡萨，身体的时候从如果继续想修三摩地的话，但悟了命的定因自因的木腿呢，他让被在的对呢公布因呢，新年主要给，但新年主把的强主的，但新年主被看多了，新年被人把故意拖呢，都是个故了，现在的木腿呢公布因呢，这个人。但等待的继续想继续修三摩地的话，但目前呢，新年公年出呢，乌了米比公大让给托呢新年都能这个话，乌了米比定义大让给托呢，大让给托呢，全部的时间点，希望的国外的卡苏国的怕嘎真时间点，真时间点别卡多的了，年下的3000年了，到哪去？我第一托呢，你生米巴了他妈下下的特别到起，下路下当的见了这了推用过了，的推不低了点的米巴了下西不下着了，你下你看上训吧，乌鲁帕东苏听长个帕苏听呀当，帕东呀牛的记了这边，听这个长个你去在几把都米巴的。今天马上来拖呢，整个的线呢，制图呢，现在当不的在龙巴的是卡上选吧？我当然，你现在当不龙才对，第一嘛，军的嘛，去年你现在你不的军顿就不塞的咯，那今年送把零点就不塞，我军顿就不塞的，没把讲了下呀的，讲了刚上去退图过来，没把了，新贵马用别拖呢，新贵浪上马用别拖呢，讲了公咱嘛拖呢，公给菜龙。三家的年纪也不有图呢，全都是推图的，干嘛送西，俺送的今天干嘛你送的？第推图别个了，你不现在你不进顿就不塞的，我今天图呢，大人的图呢，新年主要要的，我了没的。
So Rinpoche said previously, well, therefore it's better to keep the sessions short and have more meditation sessions. But most important is to keep the mind relaxed. Rinpoche used the English term relaxed. So mind and body should be very relaxed when we meditate. And then as to the next question, apparently it's about generating or cultivating calm abiding. Can we use the breath? And so Rinpoche says, yes, we can do breathing meditation. Based on breathing meditation, it's possible to cultivate calm abiding. So if you cultivate calm abiding, you go through 9 stages, the 9 stages of setting the mind and so forth. And it doesn't matter what your object, I mean, it doesn't have to be a specific object, it can be your breath. So focusing on your breath and then working with the two obstacles, the two negative, the two mental factors of laxity and distraction. So to overcome these two, to develop steadiness as well as clarity by cultivating mindfulness and introspection, or by enhancing mindfulness and introspection. So in that way, we can actually we can develop calm abiding. So first, of course, we need to listen to what our teacher tells us. So receive the instructions, and based on that, we choose an object, we take an object and focus our mind on it. We place our mind on that object based on our teacher's instructions. And as explained yesterday, Rinpoche said, he talked about it well before in the last sessions, you then breathe in and out. So one breathing cycle breathing in and out, that's one breathing cycle, one breathing round. And if you can do 21 rounds or 21 cycles without any distraction, well, then you've reached the first level of setting the mind. When you direct your mind towards the object of meditation, and you can do these 21 rounds without great obstructions or distractions or mental sinking, that is laxity. And then you continue to the next state. The next state is then continuous setting or stabilizing of the mind, and then resetting the mind, and so forth. Now, with regard to the setting,
第五的了，这我记得，第二些乌了米的公交的讲了，没把的小路都写些，送下，没把小呀给你不的，真不的真不，是吧？没把小的了结不是个人，结别你不真不是送不的，结别你不的了，当俺结别你不是，没把结别你不的了，真不点不的，真不的样乌的也听过的。乌当然叫了，乌都是出听的，怕当的是乌的也听过的，也听的马当的，真白个没把真不结果的。真说呢，真的个那浪上，被真把的结吧，就伢的用过嘛了，真的可真把的了，手袋子的要了，这样俺做都做点的真不结吧，人家讲了，真差别结了，但是的地个嘞，他顺的嘞，他今天没听的，可能呢，刚才没些修。真把的结巴，就伢的用死嘛了，但是的地了，但是地不地讲了，都是剩下，样真不起，样真不起的的，样真不起。
So Rinpoche said, well, then the next stage arises, which is continuous setting the mind. So at that time, you're actually without mental thinking, without laxity, and without excitement or distraction, without these two factors actually being active, you can focus on the object for 3 to 4 minutes, which is the criterion for having reached the second level. So in that way, you slowly go through the 9 stages. You develop the 9 stages just by focusing on the breath. Then the next question by someone else was, well, what about losing the object? What do I do when I breathe, when I do the breathing meditation or other meditations and I lose the object? Well, Rinpoche said for that you need mindfulness. Mindfulness counteracts forgetting the object. We may forget the object. We may forget to focus on the object, so that first you recall the object, you focus, you're mindful of the object, and then you lose it. But usually you don't lose it right away. It's like you're mindful of the object, and then after some time, the object gets lost, as in like you forget, your mind forgets and thinks of something else. So then you need to bring the mind back. Rinpoche says usually for most people, once you generate mindfulness, then for some time, for a few moments, you're able to stay with the object, and only then you forget. It's impossible to, Rinpoche believes it's impossible to have mindfulness and right away forget. No, for most people, there's some time that you stay with the object. There's some time that you remain focused, and only then you forget.
出租的，鼓励自己，让自己，想，再想所愿，再想所愿，就样样的，处处了真就业的是没不的，样成不起，样成不起就业的咯。
So it's therefore in that sense it's those two kind of, first you're mindful, then you forget, you're mindful again. So Rinpoche says like you frequently need to remind yourself.
당가지니 린자노마도 저 주딘디 린자기 되어 있는 아주 다르긴 신적이 나한테 쉬어라서 말이에요.
Anyway, Rinpoche is unable to continue to answer your questions because otherwise we won't finish today's lesson. So Rinpoche says he can't answer all of your questions.
等到第练习呼吸，久了会觉得无聊。那第一呢，那第了，这我第三步掐骨等了，既当你工作长么了，他无聊卡萨的，工作长么了，一面不同那面不掐月呢，你也当心他记着。但工作了样，工作当去年的节当，样子接不接了，同那月不刚洗记了。乌了米的公家第几步了？一面不掐个月为呢？呀，你最新大几日？但第二个了呢？当的领导的区意思。
You see.
Apparently, there's one question. I'm still looking for it, but I can't find it right now. Well, apparently the question is with regard to not having any interest in, for instance, breathing meditation. So now Rinpoche says, well, there are different scenarios. Maybe there's no interest, you don't like to meditate altogether. That is one scenario. Or you don't like to meditate on the breath. That's a different situation. Or you don't like to practice the Dharma. There's no interest in the Dharma practice. So they're all different kind of possibilities. You may like the Dharma, but not like to meditate or not like
다
to
지당의
meditate on the breath.
공제를 이메와 차기여버이나 다 다기 공도 쉬바 낭신 로 공자야라 점바 망부 여베나니 변의 점바 띵야다 시전 띵야 디수제의 공기 리차로 다 진시 띵야다 딘데 체네 다 수수기 생라 또 당진다고 제토바이나 딘제부디라 평송수가 상망유한요 다 딘데 가야 마제바이나 민디바 상망 수수 토트파용 그래 내가 러친부 가르치는 바 참아 진실을 띠니 제고야지 진실 누가 야부면은 간대 요양 거라며 다 디네 자치선의 시바이나 체베 유엔디 다나 신기지 상부 유엔디 다나 신기 배 문에 장내기 상부 자치 신부 유엔디 간대 주연 참아 진실이 제고 공긴 제고 그랬는 이거로 시선 디주 통소나 오다 공제를 인내인 거래 다 간도 수수 수수 디제 마오고도 아니 로 야면은 디제 마부게 마존나야 등에 존에 엔티도 더 딘데 상당시 디제 모공의 수주요 말하다 양답에 디제 야부주에 진실을 띵고 거래 디지리다
So Vibhushi says, well, if you have no interest, if there's someone who has no interest in meditation in general, well, first of all, when we talk about mindfulness and introspection, they're actually part of meditation. They're aspects of meditation. And now, when we think about the benefits of meditation, well, the benefit is that we can control our mind. So, controlling our mind leads to many wonderful results. On the other hand, if we don't control our mind, well, we'll experience a lot of unwanted situations. We'll have a lot of unwanted experiences. Now, whatever we do, we need mindfulness. Whatever work we engage in, whether it's any kind of extensive work or whether it's developing a good heart and so forth, for all important activities, we need mindfulness. And mindfulness has therefore great results. So meditation, as mindfulness is part of meditation, therefore meditation becomes helpful, becomes beneficial. And it's just a matter of, do we want to be happy? Do we want to be happy or do we want to suffer and have problems? Well, actually, of course, everyone wants to be happy. No one is going to say, I don't want to be happy and I want to suffer. But we're also talking about the type of happiness we're looking for. In terms of its quality, we're looking for a special kind of happiness, a lasting type of special happiness. So that's important to consider. Therefore, in that sense, not having an interest in meditation, we need to consider the importance of mindfulness, of introspection, and so forth, that are all part of meditation, get an understanding of their advantages.
다 디네 우르미베 공제디라 디차기여버이나 니 우르미네 공바이나야 우르미 운디간라 미바디 또 스터디원도 마세베 우르미 디간라 난도 뇽른 드레기 고바미세치 도 디 고바디 여버디 시버체 시버체베 토네 니 우르미네 공제바이나야 미바 신다르 미네 공제기 표현참마 지버지장지 토교레스 제장 우르미네 공제디라
Now, if there's no interest in doing breathing meditation, well, of course, that's possible. But again, we need to consider the importance, or we need to consider the benefits of engaging in breathing meditation. It is said that it's an easy object. So the object here, it's easy to focus on the breath. That's one advantage. And it's also very beneficial in reducing distractive thoughts, all sorts of the wandering mind is very, very helpful to overcome the wandering mind. So that's the purpose for focusing on the breath. And those are all aspects we should consider, we should think about. And then with regard to choosing another object and other than the breath, well, whatever are the advantages of focusing on another object, focusing on the breath has the same advantage. So there's no difference in terms of both have the same advantages, whether we choose an object other than the breath or we choose the breath, whatever advantage you gain, whatever advantage whatever benefits you have when focusing on another object, you also have when you focus on the breath. So considering all that, you may actually generate an
다
interest in
우르
doing
미니
breathing
공제 딜라
meditation.
미버 신달라 미니 공제 참말라 매데버치 가리오스나 다 딘딩 가주 참여하고도 미집에 안다 순데 란데디간라 가주 시제 도와선도 시제 주 가래 신수 당스라고 그러베 셜르지 우르르 당스기도 하니 시제 수수 군준데 란데디간라 우 당디간라 우르르지 당스 디 미버 신달라 딘데기 표현이 매바디 우르 미세요버치 말베
And actually, when we talk about the breath, well, nowadays, when people are stressed out, especially in the West, like when people are stressed out, then you tell the other person, breathe. So you ask them to calm down. So therefore, definitely there's a special quality to breathing, to breathe in a calm way, because it's beneficial when you're stressed out.
다 양치 딘데 요 용요다 양치 제데디간라 참말로 님부 매버 통대지 용아요다 제부디 제비 푸당나 데네 제부디 제비 푸당나 데치지니다 세기 치당 세기 조지당 칼라베 가서 그래 다 세린 담만다베 셰제 루제 뎀베 이투어스 딘도 참마 디디요레 아니 베 되베 연디 평소 수버딘데 요르디 제부디 제비 푸당나 데네 님부 민도 징요르다 아니 방구도 방구 살파기 데 텔란데 데데시네 오 다디 방구지 니부 미도티 다 참말로 님부 메고 쳐야지요 다디니 그 랑싱기 레데지레 로 상동고에 자고다
그냥 방콕 디고랑아 고催眠도
방구 방구스나
不
치가이
是人啊，我知道，我是说，他跟帮过，
쿠랑기 사 방구디 사간라 데치지네 다 데사 요마로 사간라 데네 쿠랑 칼라 롱간두 아니 칼라 라스는 도시위지 데 데 다리 데 산이 데 난데 나 니마지 쿠상로 코니 아이 다 오게 레가 디자니 님부미도 산틴데 팅요레스 쿠랑
帮过的哎，
칼라
帮过他，
응
帮过他个人听着这样有人哎，没事。
어
那当
방구이 레가라
没事，
님부 메버
嗯，
통야
没
다
事
참말로
没事，
님부 메버 통야 요레
没事。
Of course, it's possible that you have a sense my life has no meaning. It's meaningless, basically. There's no point to my life. Well, for instance, a king, a very rich king, may live in his palace and have all the riches that he can possibly imagine. So he may have like a golden table, golden chairs, the best food whatsoever, and have anything, any comfort that you can think of, and still feel it's all meaningless. But that sense of meaninglessness, well, anyone could have. A beggar could have the same sense, not having enough food, having to sleep on the floor. To get some food, the beggar has to go out and back for food. And I mean, anyone could come to the conclusion, no matter what their life is like, that it's meaningful, that it has no essence, that there's no point to life. I mean, it doesn't matter what the circumstances are. We could all have that sense.
다 간들 우르미니 공제 디기 짐바상 야도 당교리 디시버치
Anyway, the point is that when we meditate on the breath, if we do breathing meditation, that will help us to improve our mindfulness.
다디올라 디치도 비제다디 칼레카기에나 그 두제 주는 저기로 주 통도 주도 지니 때 아니 예수죠. 아니 싫어 공피든 저기 주주디 마운드 튜버로 마운드 님바당 비자 마운드 따와당 아니 밀레티워 마운드 지야당 어디수 제디 싫어 공도 피해기 주 조우치하고다.
This is apparently about study. I still haven't found the question. Yeah, unfortunately, I never know which question Rinpoche reads. Apparently, it's about the balance between study and meditation. So Rinpoche said, well, if you're tired, if you grow tired of meditating, you do some study. If you grow tired of study, you do some meditation. But the study is important because it helps us to develop more wisdom, more understanding, and more
우디 나는
wisdom.
저기 근데 초들이 왜요 말에. 드디어라.
So then Rinpoche said there's no need to keep the breath inside. You don't need to keep your breath inside as you're meditating. Apparently there's a question regarding that.
日常生活这样短暂的练习可以吗？那就是刚有不的公家的，把最突突的公家企业能这个多，但公家就是每月个量习不记的，不足家我也给买的，那么。
Apparently the question is about the time of meditation and what to do if there's no time to meditate. And Rinpoche says, well, we should meditate as long as we can. If we find some time and there's no time, well, there's nothing you can do. You shouldn't force it. If you don't find the time to meditate, then there's nothing you can do but not meditate. So all you can do is not meditate if you just don't find the time.
가상가서 공양기 류팀반야샤기 공디 담 구주인고디 시류를 미니 공양 다랑제 수비 나로기 차샤를 미니 공 시에요 말에 이 공양의 요래 디시에요 말 메장 수루 가에 메두바세 메장 류 메두베랑 신 공양의 메장 수루 공양 요러 디송 쉬요 말에 어떤 데는 말 어떤 데서
And then there's one question apparently about how to meditate on the body. So Rinpoche said, well, yesterday I talked about meditating on the body, but we haven't talked about the inside of the body. It was more like becoming aware of the external aspects of the body. So like what the skin and so forth feels like external in your face and so forth. So with regard to the inside of your body, well, there are meditations on the impure nature, for instance, of the body, but we haven't gone through this yet.
So it's
better we leave the questions now. Rinpoche will stop answering questions. Now, as to the meditation focusing on the mind, well, first of all, we should become aware of how we're sitting. Are we sitting in a relaxed and calm way? We should watch our mind, what's going on in the mind, pay attention to that. And then get a sense that whatever appears to the mind, whatever we're thinking of, well, we should let it go. We should not be concerned about it and just let it go. And again, for our mind to reach this kind of very calm and relaxed state, it may be helpful to do to engage in the meditation of calming the wind energy. So the 9-round breathing meditation, or as Rinpoche describes it, of the meditation on relaxing the wind energy. So the 9 rounds, let's do the 9 rounds, as they're also called. So whether you call them relaxing the wind energy, or we call them the 9 rounds of breathing meditation. So you go through these 9 cycles, closing your left nostril, breathing in, so forth. It's clear with the 9, you've finished the 9 rounds, didn't you?
생기 랑신 디 통야기 치도 공주비 랑신 쓰고로 네거기 랑신 디 통비 치도 공제야 용거래 다야 생기 네루 다 생기 네다 공주비 랑신 딜량 공주비 랑신 차슈디다 디차디고로 생 참무 차차차차 신시시네 뉴만린지 지비 유세기 시버스 생 차슈 딘데기 네단디 원신 투야기 치도 공제야다 양 생기 된다메 랑신 타도 공토의 제도 공제 된점绕用多但我做当地那个了新人民的公家的新苦浪的当地的人心看这起我让说用心被新苦浪看这起吧谁是这边当地的看这起不低也不紧我们托一个制度公家过来是
Now, with regard to focusing on the mind, meditating while focusing on the mind, well, here there are different aspects to that kind of meditation. First of all, when we talk about the mind, the kind of conventional aspect of the mind. So on the conventional level, on a coarse conventional level, what are the characteristics? What is the nature of the mind? Well, it is clear and knowing. Clear or luminous, as it's sometimes translated. So the mind has this quality of being, first of all, clear, being luminous, which means that any object can appear to the mind. Any object can arise in the mind, any object can appear to the mind. And then it has the other quality or the other characteristic of being knowing. So it's clear and knowing. It is knowing. Knowing in the sense that the mind can perceive anything. It can take to mind. It can perceive anything. And in that way, anything can appear to it and anything can be perceived by the mind. Those are the two qualities. And it is through our own experience that we can come to understand that kind of conventional aspect of consciousness or of the mind. And then we can take the conventional kind of qualities of the mind or the conventional nature of the mind to a deeper level by meditating on the subtler type of mind, the subtle mind all the way down to the subtlest clear light mind. So to engage in meditations on the mind that help us to identify that extremely subtle clear light mind. Now, those are all the conventional aspects of consciousness of the mind. And then there's also the ultimate aspect, the ultimate nature, the final nature, the final mode of existence of the mind that we can meditate on. So there are different types.
수수 생 단대기 생디 간데 두두 스타윤디 강라 생딘데 두 세치네 나수 레라보 지진이 주된 투기와 말이 로 주된 투기와 말이 가레스가 디강라 생디라 카두요 말이 다 롱레장 타와리 가생 아주 우르 수 두두 딘데 요 말이 카두요 말스레인바 생디레장 자오네 수 자오네 요 말이 수수 마주 바리 이스 마주바리 이 자원이요 말이 수 자원이요 말이 아니 바 투리세 바 투데세 근데 투야게요 말이 라버스는 진도 투가 침바이나 미기 통해 매워 있는데 라벤도 투네 라베기 진양야 순데 지여바이나 아니 그게 수다 순데 지다해 주어로 야민의 지야 순데 지는 수불로 투용디 간다 장부레샤 안 주부레샤 세징 원내 제조 근데 지매버리 수수 마주바리 이스 마주바리 리자메바리 다 미기 통야기 카도데 딜레션 요 말에 카도양 요 말에 지금 메디강라 수수 생간데 두다 슬러디강라 지따마싱이 수르치로 이 가바르다고 세수르치 딘데지 레용그레스
Of these different types of meditations, the meditation Rinpoche will talk about today is the meditation on the mind from the point of view of its coarsest conventional level. So from the point of view of the characteristic of the mind of being clear and knowing. Now, when we say the mind, what does it mean? How does the mind exist? Initially, it's very difficult for us to observe the mind, to watch the mind, to focus on the mind. That's not easy. Why? Because it's difficult to understand what the mind actually refers to. It's not clear to us what is meant with the mind. In fact, the mind is subtler than, for instance, the wind energy, the wind or for instance, the breath, the air that is an aspect of like the energy wind. So that is already, when she's talked about it, like the air that we breathe in and out, for instance, being subtle, not having color and shape. However, it's still something we can become aware of. The mind is subtler than that, subtler in that, well, there's no shape, there's no color. The mind doesn't have shape, it doesn't have color, but it's also not obstructed by anything. Now, when we move our hand, for instance, our mind is not obstructed by the movement of our hands. So it can basically move through our hands and so forth. It's not obstructed in any physical way. It doesn't have any texture. It's not something we can hold on to. It doesn't feel soft or rough and so forth. So in that way, having no visual aspect, having no textural aspect and so forth, it's very difficult to understand it.
센스에디 간데시 요레스 러디강라 다기 슈바나 신기 수지 다니 드마두바 수두두 메데바 카두 까타마타 메데바 리야 주부던 장부 메데바 딘데기 동베 다니 딘데기 동바레 수지 동바 로 수수 마주베 다니 수지 동바 수 메베랑신 수지 동베 다니 수지 동나 양 센스에디 나주 상르지 당디강의 유나주기 유기 나와 참아 구강라 샤주에 되니 샤퉁이 로 담을 참아 샤퉁이 미기 통바 참아 그강을 샤퉁이 안주기 구어 참아 그기 아니 진퉁이 안주 나로로 구어 참아 그 진퉁이 나기 나로로 지마 가래 초어디 참아 그기 다 하쿠퉁이 아니 대베 된다 참아 수 샤퉁이 진퉁이 마음발을 차신 담을 참아 그기 지제군이 제고스지 진퉁이 자시 띵신이 단대기 유 담을 가서 통대디 참아 구강을 샤디에 로 담을 참아 수샤kin기 다니 담을 참아 구강을 시구낭로를 소니 담을 세워나신 수샤용나신 유 유나수기 유탕제기 나와디 수를 가서 샤르 다니 수샤지유에 대비 딘대기랑 신지 어디리스다 센스는 어디리스다 단대 가서 센트리다 단대 센트
Now, when we talk about the mind, well, as just mentioned, so it doesn't have a shape, it doesn't have a form, it doesn't have any color, it's not a colorful object, it doesn't have any texture, it's not soft or rough, and so forth. Now, basically, it's non-physical. Though it's not a physical object, it's a non-physical object. And still, although it is not something material, although it's not something physical, all sorts of objects can appear to it. Whatever object we can think of, it can appear to our mind. So visual objects, objects we usually see, we can see with our eyes, for instance. Well, visual objects appear to it. Sounds appear to it. Audio objects, sounds appear to it. Smells, anything we can smell with our nose, all that can appear to our mind. Likewise, the mind can think about past objects. Past objects appear to it, and the mind can think of these different objects. It can also think of the future, take anything to mind that could happen in the future, and based on that, kind of plan ahead. So anything, really anything, any object can appear to the mind. And in that way, it is like a mirror. A mirror can reflect any kind of form, any kind of shape and color. In that way, we're similar to a shape, analogous to a mirror. Analogous to the mirror, the mind can take to mind anything. Anything can appear to the mind. The mind can perceive anything. So here we're talking about the present mind, of course. Our present mind has this potential, the mind right now, our present mind right now, well, that is able to take anything to mind. Anything can appear to it.
수지 동배 다니 당 유탕제지 수니디 수 샤퉁이기 세유 다니로 수지 동배 다니야 인라 아니 유기 넘버 3만 수샤유디 순도 수니나라 샤와나신 샤주유디 유창마도 디나로로 수 세부진 샤주유디 세유 다니야 인로 수지 동배 다니야 인 딜라 동세 동바다 세워 라바치 세워디 다랑지들다 동세 라베긴 주당지 어디서 항상 비제 나로로 센디 동배 다니 레세유 다니 레세기 고 라바치 어디서 거다 디 동바니기 동니티로 구주메리디 난데 레 당부비 거라 뭐 당부 부니 공 신도민이 공제비 거기 동바다 세유 다니 세틴레지를 송인 거
Therefore, our mind has the nature of being non-physical. It's a non-material, non-physical type of object. It is empty of being physical. At the same time, it's also clear or luminous. Clear and luminous in that any type of physical object can appear to it. Any object, in fact, any type of object can appear to our mind, whether it's physical or non-physical. And in that way, there are two qualities. It is empty and clear. This is how the scriptures sometimes describe the mind. But here, empty does not refer to emptiness, as in like the ultimate nature of the mind, but it refers to empty of being something physical. So the mind lacks that quality of being, or is empty of being physical, while it's also clear, any object can appear to it. This is how the scriptures sometimes, just from a rough kind of point of view, not going deeper into the characteristics of the mind, just from a rough point of view, the scriptures talk about the mind being empty and clear. So
姊妹
这之中的空的意思不是
不是空性，
不是对，它顶这一的几多它俺让说他们下图看苏苏样嘛的顶这我第的sen了没别西年给没电视了为那sen了没呢公家的讲了，那俺让做sen的没把了下用的讲我第没把了下过的。
now the fact that anything can appear to the mind, when we meditate on the mind, when the focal object of our meditation is the mind, that's what we should take to mind. That is what we should focus on that ability of the mind.
牙记下头也算得起哦，俺呢顶得起因不的，没不的，没说的顶得起因不的，上的起，欧子的起，没不的多是你别算得起，没不的啥别算得起，穷爽，但地穷啥地方哦，但地刚了剩下一个特些结果，但地刚了剩下地刚了，那边那个给去的做样，蛮真不起，一样路的呀，下马就。当代以越南当做下第样第技术长期呢第阶段上段第样嘛些，毛被恰西的虽然嘛对不起，嘛对不起其实呢，第阶我讲第卡多的了，是东北闹顺的是南方给闹顺的，东北闹顺的下用过了，我第下个卡多的了，第一个说的越南当做下的为生，是鸟个哈古土个number 10 뇽장 지군이 하고 돼지도 어디 디미벌 샤고.
Therefore, our mind has the ability that anything can arise, any kind of appearance of any type of object can arise in the mind. And that's, if we get a sense of this being the nature of the mind, we should gain some certainty of this aspect and focus on it. So focus on that clarity of the mind. Clarity, in other words, the fact that anything can arise and can appear to the mind. We should focus on that. But focusing on that means that we should let go of any past object. So not being distracted. Try not to be distracted by past objects, taking anything to mind that has happened in the past. Also, with regard to any object in the present, other than the mind, you shouldn't take anything to mind other than the mind itself. So not to think of any other, any present objects. And you shouldn't think of the future. So not plan ahead, etc. In other words, any distractive thoughts of past, present, and future, should let these go. Let these go. And when you let go of all these different thoughts, then there's a sense of like this empty appearance, as in like no past, present, or future really appearing. And you focus should just be in that moment of like almost like a space that like an empty space that you can now focus on. Well, you should fill that with the mind as your focal object, a mind to which anything can appear, a mind that has the nature of being a mere experiencer. So to focus, letting go of past, present, and future objects, you just focus on the present mind, having the
nga zo ha gu do yu gi na chu sha ji ding yi su su ma dun ding yi su su gi dan da nyong de ora dan da nga zo sen se dan da sang ku le ji mong ba ji tin ju na ku nang san ting gi do mong ba tin la ora mong ba ji cha shi ji ting ju na ku nang san ting gi ro de be den da ji chen ba ji na ku nang san sha yung gu do din de sha tung yi ji nga zo nyang nyong tu ni su su nyang nyong gi di xi wo nyong nyong e di nyong nga zo nyang su nyong de ora be na kan na le ji ri nga mu sha ba yi na nga mu di sha di gang la ji gang la nga mu di sha be ni nga mu di nyang su nyong di go di ro ta nga mu di ba xie shu sin de da chang gi ji li gang la nyong nga mu nyong de ro tian nga mu nyong di ba xie shu sin na kan ni man zhi xie jiao shu sin na ngamundi kandeji resin rishi jago gore 제도디 ngamundi tsiki guni chen tuyadi tsiki guni pa xie tuyadi kale kabo yore 이내야 지 시베 지리기 시바 줘로 지리기 시바 디기 뇽에 토네 ngamu디 뇽이 요래다 뇽 어디 나신 시바 딩아 주 tsiki guni pa xie 주스나리다 디네지 요르다스 파 xie 주스나 카부레디 nga중고스 단다 뇽디 요르도 냐뇽스 좀 단다라 시바 뇽신 버리다 nga주
So therefore, in that moment, we should just focus on the mind to which all sorts of objects appear and focus on the mind that has the nature of being an experiencing entity. But actually, this is something we know. Actually, from our own experience, we are aware of the mind knowing objects. It doesn't require nothing external in the sense of like we experience this from moment to moment. Why? Because when we remember something that happened in the past, well, we know we are remembering something. We can talk about the fact that we've remembered something. In the moment when memory arises, for instance, well, we know we just remembered something. Or when we experience something, when we have experienced something, we know we've experienced that. So in that sense, it's something that we know from our past experience. From moment to moment, we know what we're aware of. And in that way, through our own experience, we're aware of the fact that we're aware. So it's a bit like when you have a candy, you eat a candy. So you know that you taste the candy. You know the taste of the candy. You know that you're with your tongue consciousness, you experience the taste of the candy. If someone asks you to explain the taste of the candy, like what does it taste like? It's very difficult to put into words. It's very difficult to express the exact taste, the exact experience you have. But that does not negate the fact that you actually experience the candy.
ngamu zaone rama nyung kinki michila ani 수수기 ngamu nyode de kulan de xie jiao na ngamu de ji yorda san de xie kan de jiao da
So for instance, if there's someone who's never eaten a candy, how are you going to explain the taste of that candy? How are you going to explain to them what that candy tastes like if they've never eaten anything sweet? So anyway, the point here that Rinpoche made is that mind is similar.
kuran kan na ngamu ji ju ne kuran la nyong ju na ani ngamu nyong su na ngamu xing da
So the best way to give that other person who's never experienced anything sweet, to give them experience of something sweet, is to remove the candy from your mouth and give them or hand them that candy, so for them to experience it themselves. So the mind is like that.
시고에 망부 요래 세상 시버 대 ngaran su dan dan nyong de ba tarang re 다디 nyong de ba di le mi yong di gang la mi be kha du di le de be nian dang di zu cha ju ju yo ma cha su na pan du ga an dan de yi ong bi ong bu nga wang xin nga gi ji si man dang wa chi dan de gang cha de ba di zu je di yi ji si man dang wa chi yi le mi ji ni ma ong ba di cha xi ma din di gang la ma ong be cha xi di zu ye ding ma ju di gang la 난공 선듯이 샤용고 디주에 말해 송도 비체나도 디주에 말했어. 다 디카도 딜라 아니 난공다고 차용고 디카도 딜라 쳔베 생지진의 쳔버기 안수기 단대기 세동기 다니 공도 쉬대기 수기 동바당 유난나주 차투겐기 다니 진데지 유진이 디수수 냥용 시대에 들어 냥용 시고로 수수도요 말아 수사고로 수도도 민도 아니 유난주기 나오디 구강의 샤투기여디 수수시고라디 샤그도 구강라 어디 진배 세이치진 엔디강라 진배 세이네 진배디강라 샤진 진배 진배기 미버디야 진버체네 아니 세미버디강도 세동기 다니기 센디강라 샤야
So similarly, similar to this candy that we actually need to experience we need to experience ourselves to really know about it. The mind is similar in that it's very difficult to explain the mind, to put it into words, but it's something that we can know through our own experience. It's something that we do know on a daily basis. We continuously experience that. We experience something. Anyway, the point here is that we should meditate in such a way that we focus on that mind. So there are a lot of objects that we can only really understand if we experience them. And so the mind is one of them. The candy is one of them. The mind is one of them. So here, in order to do this meditation fast, we should basically make sure that our mind does not pay attention to any past object, that our mind does not pay attention to any present sense object, and does not pay attention to any future object. And when you let go of these past, present, and future objects, there's some kind of darkness that appears to your mind. So that's a positive kind of darkness. There's nothing wrong with that kind of darkness. This darkness that you now fill with mindfulness of your own mind. So you generate mindfulness of your own mind, a mind that is clear and empty of being physical.
단단 다가랑
죄송.
장.
Should we do this now?
가수 투투 신디아 챔버치 대바당 단다 모티수파 까니 세동기 다니 신디아 챔버치니 미버디강라 샤투도 해지 뛰다.
So let's do this together here now, that you remember just that clear and empty nature of the mind. So clear as in like any object can appear to the mind, empty as in like being non-material. So do this. It's something that you know through experience. Through our experience, we know that all sorts of objects appear to the mind. Through our experience, we know it doesn't have color, it doesn't have shape, and so forth. It's non-physical. So be mindful of that. Let go of any past, present, and future objects, and just focus on that clear and empty nature of the mind.
도시니 공용이디. 우주 자고다. 우주 슬라고래다. 더시 제고. 더시 맞는 저거.
So really need to make an effort. We need to really try it out. If we don't try it out, we won't be able to do this meditation. So make an effort, try it out.
다디 진제 공백거라 다 공당디 민다오다 더 송순의 지요래 더 민다오 송도 다 송순의 지요에 있는다 디 공백가 신의 미니도스 다 신의 조용고로 신의 미니 공도 야윤디강라 미버디 진배 마제의 체신에 신미버강라 샤야디 샤윤디강라 깔레체 송요레스 깔레 민다오 송용그리스다 지디 가르 용그리스나 생디다 생기 생의 미디고다 간수 생디 비제단에 수수기 수수 생의 미고로 디가도 디라 지디 난도 신다 망부지 용그리스 나온 다음에 망부 샤용그리스 디 샤용디 간라特시 당부지디 난도도 샤용디 간라 베나 디가도 디라 디순르치 다 나도 담을 망부 샤야요레 수수기 변의 강연 순듯이 내용 유업이 있는다. 나 강연 디아 진용이쇼로. 강연 침베 딜레소는 양띠 마인베 지 미신다 라지 녀버지기 뇌신 순듯이야. 지송들이다. 뇌베신. 뇌 지송은 딘데기 다 루디수제디라 난도스고라. 단다 난도세디 디수제디스고. 다 디수제 지용베 카도딜라. 난도야 지용디강라 난도 쿠란을 파대시시 난도 가르치 용베 난도 다랑지 지송상 난도 쿠란을 파 난도디 컨데도 따용디강라 아니 야 난도디 수수마 주베 인디강 문제 제토에 맹이 줘리 그严重인수의 용거리 상상
그랑 다긴 탑시에 숨스나 강의 숨 체베 값수 탑시에
레레레 강에
숨나
용디 파한 고야당
글쎄
거두디 지고야 더시송
글쎄
Now, with regard to meditating on the mind, so there are three kind of aspects or three methods we can apply here. Three methods as a reaction to or as a way to deal with three problems we may face by meditating on the mind, by focusing on the mind as our object of meditation, which basically focusing on the mind is a way to also train in calm abiding. But anyway, what we do is here in this meditation, we apply mindfulness to the object of meditation, which is the mind. Now, the three difficulties, the first difficulty is that the mind watches the mind or the mind observes itself. So that is difficult. It's difficult in particular with regard to all sorts of appearances arising in the mind. So when we try to focus on the mind, what happens is all sorts of things appear to the mind. So while we try to focus on the mind's quality of being clear, as in like appearances, anything appearing to it, and empty, as in like it's empty of being something physical. When we do that, at that time we may remember some problem, for instance. So as we're just trying to focus on the object, some problem of the past arises, or we have the thought we want to harm someone. So what happens is we should now use these distracting thoughts. I mean, that's really what they are, distracting.
다 그 예차버로 그 다기 지용 거다 제디간 그 예엔두리간라 아니 그 야지에디 그마 음 진첸두리간라 아니 야 센타기 수지 동바당 유난난초 세위 세동기 다니기 센수수기 뇽데버디 양디 야 준비 챔버지네 센티간라 양 샤야지.
So what happens is you now focus on the distracting thoughts because they're also states of mind. So you can watch these distracting thoughts. And in that way, you focus again on the mind. But the problem is when you focus on the mind and you no longer focus on something physical. So maybe the person that you want to harm and so forth. So you lose a physical object and it disappears. Your object of meditation disappears. So then
네个了판도스 예주야의 가야기 터시레마도 녀모 봉야기 터고마디 말다 디 송고 말다 다단다 체시기 핀도 요버디 비지단 거리스.
Anyway, so then you try to bring the mind back on the object. Again, remember the mind's quality of being free or empty of existing as a physical object and having the ability for any object to appear to it. But anyway, anytime a distracting thought arises, you focus on the distracting thought.
nye sen le mine shine gong di yu da sen le mine shine di gong go de sen le mine gong ja yu ti nye gong di ja yu da di ka du di la nang dun da ma de le du sang di ge su nang dun da ma de le du sang shi shine su su gi 가르 제 구규여 바당 가르 제 신바 인바 디 수수기 생 디 가르 강라 샤여 바당 샤야기 터시 지규여 바디 마라베 토네 난도 가르 지베 있네 야 지주 지시네로 가르 지베 있네 야 지주 지니 쿠줄을 디문 데베 수르지 수수 생을 미니 공고로 생을 미니 공디가라 난도 디야 생기 다니 차디 거래 가르 지베 있네 쿨을 따디지 너 디문 답에 수르지 뉴센티 디가나 오다 뉴센티 레송 디야 생기 다니 다 생기 차시지 차디고 그래 생기다 가서 그래 동비치스라고 그래 다 생나로기 네거지 차디고 엔다나 생기 수수 강에 되는 진송나 강에 침베 침버디 지송 삼바지 또 가르지 손의 디강라 생샤시시니 자여기 수수 내가디 신라 미니 공기 요디 디기 시제기 진배기 진 진바디 말라베 토니 아니 가르치 주는 지주에 순지 어떤데 지송고 그랬어 디 제외는 양 신라 미니 공제 디기 뉴바디 또 베르메르메 치르야 아니 난도 가야라 미세기 주어 때문에 그것이 뭐더 개부순의 차인 거랬어
Therefore, what is important, well, what we should understand is that when we use the distracting thoughts as the object of meditation, the distracting thoughts may disappear. So certain afflictions may disappear, but we shouldn't misunderstand that. We shouldn't think that this is a technique to totally overcome our afflictions. It's just a temporary state. When we focus on the afflictions, they start to disappear. It's just a temporary solution. But the point is that here we should allow, as part of our meditation on the mind, we should allow for any distracting thoughts to arise. We shouldn't push it away. But keep in mind that our goal is to train ourselves in the practice of calm abiding, focusing on the mind. So we may have all sorts of thoughts that arise as part of our meditation, but without pushing them away, we should allow these thoughts to arise, but not lose our objective. We shouldn't lose our sense of our objective that we want to basically meditate on the mind. And then as distracting thoughts arise, we should deal with them the way we do when we watch a movie. It's like these distracting thoughts are like objects appearing in a movie. To think of them that way, to allow for them to arise, because these distracting thoughts are all part of the mind. And if we watch the distracting thoughts, well, we're watching the mind. We're watching a particular type of mind. So likewise, when there's a problem, we remember a problem that we usually face, we'll allow for that mind reflecting on the problem to arise and focus on it. The main task is to focus on our mind. So we should not lose mindfulness of the object of meditation. In the back of our mind, we always know we're meditating on the mind. So we don't get carried away by our thoughts, but just watch them. And in that way, we get better at that. In that way, we get better at, we improve or we increase our ability we strengthen our ability to focus on a particular object, to focus on the mind. We are able to gain the ability to focus on the mind. And at the same time, since we also use the distracting thoughts, we also reduce distractive thoughts.
생간데스 되기도 생디 인데스 되고에서 생을 생지 따오스고로 수수 생디 오다 생기 나로는 디지기도 상시시네 수수기 자여기 진배기 니버순데지 진배기다 인순데지 기디고르디 인디 인다부디 이 라쇼고 뭐 진바디 그 생디고로 오다 단다 데자치송 아니 뇌생지 송 상시지네 아니 생 수수기 생기 수수기 생 진배송야디 디 진배기 수지디 고 요여버린도 어 년생나로는 디지송 시지네 수수기 수수 생라 따야기 디기 차디 고 라쇼고면도 나도 마부 지주디 감디 말라이디 양 계침 차고 그랬어
So with this meditation, what we do is we take any type of mind that arises without getting carried away by it, we just focus on these minds as part of our meditation, using the mind as our object. And as just said, the different distracting thoughts will actually be reduced by that. But we should also get a better sense of how does the mind exist when the mind observes the mind. So to get a sense that well, this is what the mind is like, this is its nature, etc. But at the same time, without losing our objective, without losing this a sense of what we're doing. So we may note there's desire right now, there's ill will, these minds
다간다
arise in our mind,
아소
and we
뒤준드네
watch them and we
수수기
note them.
가리 하기 유 가르도 유를 따야 돼 지부 많이 버지 안주 가르고도 아니 가르 따야도 시 유지부를 따야 많이 버지 수수기 가르를 따기도 세지 수수를 따야 줘로 파기 유 가르도 파기 잘라 가르도 파기 모터 가르도 슬디가나 유지부를 따야 들어 유지부를 따야 디장 많이 버지 다 디제리고 나인다 디수기希望等住年顶着带用过了，把但第告诉书记呢，叔了出带的了，俺가르치기도 세 죠， 俺가르치기도 세， 第单元的真别牛的来用过的，我第囊心切切呢，生了命的公家为卡多的了，但生个囊路人的技术，囊顿的技术，记住，你来记住，但生了你来记住切切呢。생기 가리 상기 여버디 따기 제수나 timben 유버디 굴레용.
So as we watch our mind in such a way, so the mind watches the mind, there's an aspect of the mind of mindfulness that keeps active, that doesn't lose its objective. So while the mind watches itself, there's always a sense of mindfulness. Okay, so I focus on the mind, I focus on the mind. And as you're doing this, as you're allowing for any mind to arise, you do not pay attention to the objects as such, but you pay attention to the mind being aware of the objects. So usually we just pay attention to the object. Oh, there's a car, there's a house, there's this, there's that. But without getting carried away by the appearance of the objects, we should focus on the mind itself. What does our mind do with the object? It's aware of the object. So basically the focus is inwards, it's towards ourself, it's towards what the mind is doing with the different objects. And in that way, we are focused on the mind by allowing any kind of distracting thoughts. Any thoughts are allowed. We don't use the object, we don't lose our sense of what we're doing. We're still aware that we're meditating on the mind, so that objective is not lost. But using any kind of thoughts, we use these different thoughts as an opportunity to watch the mind, to watch not the objects of the mind, to not get carried away by the objects, but by remaining focused on being aware of perceiving the objects.
동바당 수지 동바당 유난 하주 세유 유기 소니 나주 세유 다니 진기 수수기 센티를 미네 공자 용디간라 난도 담다 다기 공도 쉬기 난도 디수티디 센담다 가리 지베 이너리 지 용디간라 지마타도 파 까지 로 난도 지지 베베 쥐스 지지네고 가르치 왜 있는 항상 봐 제 도지신 봐 비에들이다 로쿠마 자바 구치 레스나 항상베 주화슈니 봐 비에스는 줘로 오 디스는지 난도 가르치 왜 있는 오 난도디 지수 지지 난도디 지용디 간다 야 난도디 유디 무트니 수수기 만템바 지지네 난도디 진왕지 봐 가야지 송거더디 난도지 베베 쥐스 오 디양 特西这边呢，生了命的公家别个了，叔叔给刚年的天送的哦，刚年的，今年个真把的真往起你怕假期呢，身体啊真的是，的蛮真不起，你样云咱们的下送的哦地，云咱们的下完那些地基了判出来的马基不起，你怕蛮真不起。 timba di ila sha yung goro ila shaya di pa tsinta skani semi waga shaya o tinte jiang jie yo res.
Now this is one way to deal with the kind of obstacles we face when we meditate on the mind. Another way to deal with any kind of distracting thoughts and so forth while meditating on the mind, another method is the following. as we focus on these two main characteristics of mind, of consciousness, the fact that it's non-material and the fact that anything, or the fact that it's non-physical and that any object can appear to it. So as we keep focused on these two main characteristics, when a distracting thought arises, we should push it away in the sense of we should just get rid of it. The same way as you would kick out a thief when a thief enters your building, when a thief enters your room. So right away, you kick them out. So in the same way, in a kind of forceful way, you just kick out the thoughts, just not think about it. In that way, if you have a memory of a problem, as mentioned earlier, if you remember some kind of problem you're currently facing in your life, well, force it out. Just don't think about it. Just remove it from your mind. In this, or similarly, you may have the appearance of all sorts of objects, all sorts of sense objects may appear to your mind. Well, don't pay attention to them. Don't allow for your mindfulness to keep these objects, to be attentive to the objects. So that is another way to do this.
야 상상가 수도 대당에 몽벌 가르치 구유나 몽벌응에 오다 지존나로를 내가 간데스 제구유나 수수기 된다 간데스 두구유에서 근데 틀려지 대베 카톨라 진용구도 디 진용 디간라 상니버지 당시시네 디 진의 핀도 요 말이 디 일레진의 핀도 요 말이 상시시네 카토디 파가시 엔 딜레 상루 된다 카토디 된다 유바 니 친구도 상시시네 생디 미버 출부치시네 된다 유베 미버 강나 출부야요로 오 딩아서 나중 용디기도 용구면돼 상상아서 지진용디 강나 다디 진의 핀도 요만 디 상산 마당 딜레 된다 유번 디 당시진디 된다 유버지 당요라 다 수수 미버지 당거로 어디 강나도 샤야지 디양 나중에 아주 최 나로를 디네 용구요.
So here the Chinese translator asked, well, what does it mean to force them out? You're forcing them out?
Yes.
바기 진디버디 파가 가고다 가네 센디강의 마샤 추킬레버디 가바로다.
So, well, Rinpoche said, well, that means is sometimes when we're really calm and relaxed. So we're just very calmly sitting there, and suddenly some past thoughts, some past situation appears to our mind. We remember something that happened to us in the past, or we suddenly start to think of the future. So we start to possibly worry. So what's going to happen in the future? What kind of work will I find? And so forth. Now, in that moment, while we're actually really relaxed, when these thoughts arise, we have a sense there's no need to think about it. There's no benefit if I start now remembering certain past situations, or if I now start to get worried about the future. We come to the conclusion it's useless, it doesn't help. And we kind of just push the thought away. We change the subject, if you like. We change not the subject, but we change the object. We push the thought that we consider to be harmful. We push it away and instead focus on something else. That's Rinpoche. That's what you should do in this moment. So without continuously thinking of an object that you've come to the conclusion, about which you've come to the conclusion that it doesn't benefit you, without continuously thinking about it, you just pay attention to something else. Can't we all do that? Don't we all find ourselves in those situations? Rinpoche asked, don't we all have an experience of that where we just change the object? So you stop the mind that you find harmful, you push it away and replace it with something else.
다마다 첸레순 디랑상지 가지니 미버신다 지금 랑상 샤야디 나서 공요 말어 생기 공시디 단다 야부차메디 강라 디 마디와 당랑상 제마 토에순지 용구요디 이나 딘데기 공부디 땜바이나 딘데기 주어 띠니 더시 제바이나 꼭 뭐예요 이 뭐예요.
Of course, it's not easy, as opposed to just allowing any kind of thoughts to arise in our mind. It's not easy to push them away the way Rinpoche just described, because we're not familiar with that. We've got no habit. We're not habituated to doing so. So it's not easy. It's difficult. However, in order to familiarize ourselves with it, we should do it. We should try it to slowly then make a habit of it, to slowly become more familiar with kind of controlling our thoughts in such a way.
네버 체네 다기 미버 신디 양 템버 체네 아니 심미버 간다 샤야기 터시 치고
And as to the third method, as to the third kind of method to overcoming problems, we should again focus, of course, apply our mindfulness to the mind, focus on the mind as our meditational object.
녜미기 네수디 테마주 마음베 차신 마딘 단대기 온싱아기 지스 만주고 지신 데디간라 진주주세 메딩이 동바순의 차인구도 디카도딜라 오 수수냥스뇽데 신디 수수마주베 다니 윤나수 샤야기 윤나수 세유 다니 딘데지 유 딘데지 딘데지 유데버디 수수 기 뇽데 유바 디 뇽데번디 더 센세디 오디레 진짜 신디 딩원신치네 오디신 인디간라 더 디랑 챔버치치네 인디간라 도시 샤고르다 공제
So as you do so, again, you try not to think of anything in the past. Do not focus on the future. Do not focus on any present scent object, for instance, but allow for that empty space to arise where there's nothing left really to focus on. And as you reach that kind of empty space, it's like the sense there's nothing there, then focus on the mind. Use that space for paying attention. Pay attention now to the mind, as in like the non-physical aspect of the mind, and the fact that objects, any object can appear to the mind. So that experiencing entity of the mind, just focus on that. Taking this empty space that is temporarily created by not thinking of the past, present or future, just use that to focus on the mind. So try to meditate. Now do this, to engage in that meditation. First meditate.
가만 가수 샤투에 연구이나 이 샤투에 지 용투사를 상상수는 지면돼.
So however long you do this, but isn't there a sense you can do this for a few minutes? So of keeping isn't there a kind of a self-confidence, like you can do this for some time, for a few minutes?
다 당디 도시시네리 고린 잡고 딘데리 다 도즈 세도 당고야다 세부 마차바다 딘데 딘딘 총이지 넘버 줄라 다디쿠 다리 상닝 가서 저 진행기 거수 세부 수투버 있는 수투버지 나야 마음발이야 넘버 줄로 그거 유예버리 다 게시니 가서 가려 요러 넘버 수 두나 제버 있는 생르미네 신의 주당티 단다 디낭로라 예 단다 주다야디 빈진路上 취진기 샤진 잔지 요래 샤제 신부 자오던 집어디 시ለ샤와인 디긴 집어디 용진 시제 생기 제버지도 어디니 시ለ샤시시네 슈규에다 예 토사디 더 군주자네 딘지바디 치디 슈바로 세상 지리 아니 디네 군주네 녜마 시제 做了新人民的新年 공당 气下 디양 신진도 디디 이토를 퍼니 대난도 어디데 아니 녜마니 디 도나도 조래 단다 라는 디소 나로라야 신人民的 신年 주당의 계진부 인바디 퇴용구다 라는 가시에 나로라 구매스미 신세데 디 도나데 시데마도 일단 양념이 차상 매워 있나야 도나기 토네 수최바기 데시 고도스 레버디 남부수로 쉬나 도나지 시순의 시작으로 공제의 시순의 시 공제의 취디 하고도로 야마지 수주가 바로
Now, as to how to meditate now, well, Rinpoche has explained already the way to meditate, the different stages and so forth. And now it's important that we actually do it. So for that meditation to become clearer, to get a better sense of what we're supposed to meditate on. So therefore, it's important that we have questions and clear all our questions, clear any kind of doubts. And in the future, you'll definitely also have the opportunity. Well, with Rinpoche here, we may have some time to clear some of your doubts. And also in the future, there are many teachers, many qualified teachers from whom you could learn about this. Anyway, Rinpoche says that he himself has based his explanation on how to meditate on the mind on Panchen Losang Chökyi's teachings on Mahamudra, and based on his commentary, but also on Yongtsen Yeshe Gyaltsen's kind of commentary on Panchen Losang Chökyi's explanation on Mahamudra. And His Holiness has given a commentary on that, has taught this commentary several times. And so Rinpoche says he's received the teachings on that. And in that way, these Mahamudra teachings by Panchen Losang Chökyi Gyaltsen, as well as by Yongtsen Yeshe Gyaltsen, well, they very clearly describe the meditation on the mind. They describe how to meditate on the mind. And for those of you who have an interest, well, there are different ways by which you can actually put this into practice. You yourself can practice this. There's many different opportunities. You'll always find an opportunity to engage. You will always find an opportunity to engage in these kind of meditations, to put them into practice. And if you do so, you'll develop greater interest and develop a foundation. The right kind of foundation.
미바 칸데 미바 가르치에 있는 이거 가르르미네 고네야 지리레시진디 상제 쿠란기 무수 송요 레디 센르미네 공제디 미세기 고주신 요레 숨도 상제기 꿀미니 공야당 양면의 수수기 생了미니 공야당 운종了미니 공야 디수제디了미세기 디오레스 구바요레스 다야 디리다 강사 수수기 년당 민자요다 강사 수수기 년당 민자오了바베 미버 가르치 마제 디양 민자요레 베나 나제 셰치 강사기 강지를 이름이버이나 강주제로 소바다 시제낭당망부 상당에 딜미니 공부이나 쿠란을 핀도 지어요. 간스 그 나제 슈치자 자디간라 나제 바자 아마돈 취지에 그런 연구 말어 왔다. 자시면 샤브이나. 나야 되샤 슈치 무예딩이 강사 딜라 단다디 센르미니 시네 공세 디수제디 디수제디 레장 토머 토미거수 미두벌 미비 띵인지 공부이나 딥 쿨러 핀도 치어요디 강사 수수의 뉴바 가르치 마치 세디 강사 수수기 년당을 따고에디 아장장하지 이내 지당기 차네르다 지당기 차네 쉬워이나 센르미네 공야다 상제기 꿀미네 공야다 사꿀미네 공야디 수제디라 고바 주센 미세 요레스데디 용다그 토니레 미 되샤 슈치무딘 되샤 슈춘종샤 나제 슈치무딘 나제양 구지당 순의 차베 카돌라 다 센르미네 시네공 사꿀미네 시네공 공자바이나 핀토 미세디 용그레 다 센르미네 시네 공디간라 미세기 고바 침부 가르요레스 슈웨이나
Anyway, in that way, you are able to cultivate some kind of foundation based on which you can continue with this kind of meditation. But anyway, with regard to the meditation that focuses on the mind, well, in general, the Buddha has said that it's okay to meditate on anything. The Buddha himself has clearly stated anything can be taken as an object of meditation. However, there are certain objects that are said to be very beneficial for certain reasons. So to focus, for instance, on the body of a Buddha, that is said to be beneficial for different reasons. Likewise, to focus on one's own mind or to focus on the breath. There's certain virtues or there's certain positive or certain advantages that you can gain by, or you can have by meditating on these different objects. But it's also very much dependent on a person's situation, their mental situation, for instance. So if someone suffers from great arrogance, if they're very arrogant and haughty and so forth, well, then it may be beneficial to think of all the different aspects of the mind. So the 18 constituents, for instance, all the different types of minds and their objects. So to reduce that kind of arrogance. For a person who suffers from great attachment, kind of strong desire, for instance, well, instead of focusing, of course, they can meditate on their own mind, but what might be more beneficial in that moment is to focus on the impure nature of the mind, the impure nature of the object of desire. And in that sense, therefore, individually, there's certain meditations that can be beneficial in terms of certain kind of mental predispositions. But in general, it is said that it's very beneficial to meditate on a Buddha's body, on the meditational deity's body, to meditate on one's own mind, and so forth. That is true in general. But then in specific situations, of course, there are other meditations that may be beneficial.
세동기 다니기 수수기 센티를 미니 공용디 간라 생기 네거기 랑신 세와당 리비 세리기 다니기 생코랑기 랑신 세와의 리비 다니 디 가주 가주 세도 침보 있는 가주 지 뇽토바 있는 가주 수수라 생기 랑신디 세도 침보 있는 네거기 랑신디 디 최지 생코랑기 세와다 리베 다니디 추자마기 랑신 낭신신 스고로 추 랑신기 자마리 들어 디기 자미기 차디 윈신 투바다 자마기 차디야 윈신네 딜레 네 투바 낭신 네 어디 낭신지네 생 세와다 리베기 오디 가주 수수라 세부 차지네 디가나 가주 네 투바 있는데 디 최지 생기 땡기原地 망부지 랑생기 안도스 세용야 생강의 공예만이 샤데베 바샤 상부 생기原地 망부지 신세리강의 샤샤베 바샤 상부 디소ян도스原地 디소ян도스 세용야 아니 다나신기 생기 뉴버디 슈치르루야 세리기 다니디 수수 디강의 니에토나 생了当今节女伯的休七日前些年，你准备女伯的主要被现代没着哇？顶个在现代给准备批我人，这的顶个在现代了的呢准备批我来讲，现在这个让先顶新些些呢，第了年头呢，第一准备批啊的，先来讲他吧，真正用呀当，先现在日常个第当年的卡出，第讲了年头吧，因不因呢？다랑기 토네 녜마기 수수기 제샤바 망부지야 텐토야 로 디용고레스 어디 송고도 간신은 뇽마디 파 비투어로 생코랑기 네거기 랑신 장마디 센투디 되자당 시당당 아제데 타도 디수사마 뇽미 차들어 맨장위 차들어 디파도 네거 파 예베순지 장미 차디 센투디 강라 나미기다 대비 된다 망부지 수 텐토야다 딘데기 제버 요레스 지원 가마 텐토야로 수바도 딘데 용거스 디 비제 나라 송바딩에 아우 니주 나시 지뒤치 거다 니주 나시
음.
Therefore, she says that it's important to become aware of this clear nature of the mind, of the non-physical nature of the mind. And with regard to the kind of coarser conventional aspects, well, it's the clear and knowing nature, the clear and knowing nature that we should become aware of as part of our meditation, to focus on that and to experience it. And for that kind of nature, it should become clearer as a result of engaging in this meditation on the mind. And as this happens, so as it happens, as we're able to do this, as we continuously do this meditation, and as the sense of this clear and knowing nature of our mind, as that sense grows stronger, well, first of all, our mind is actually said to be like water, like clear water, just as water is clear and clean and free of any kind of obscurations by way of its own nature. So our mind is also actually clear in terms of its own nature. It's free from any obstructions. And if we do this meditation, or through doing this meditation on focusing on the mind, meditating on the mind, we're more likely to develop the positive qualities of the mind, or the positive qualities of the mind that we've left imprints on the mind. We have the imprints for these positive qualities to arise, but they are ripened through this meditation. We're able to ripen all the imprints that enable these qualities, these positive qualities, to manifest. Our meditation will lead to the ripening of these different imprints so that they will arise in our mind. And likewise, it is said that the potential of our mind increases, or the ability of our mind increases. There's greater control. Our mind is more able to control itself. And mindfulness will increase incredibly. So in actually any kind of meditation on concentration helps for our mindfulness to increase. Any kind of concentrative meditation or single pointed meditation is a means to increasing mindfulness. But it's said that meditating on the mind is much more powerful in terms of increasing or enhancing our mindfulness. So there are all these different results, these benefits of meditating on the mind. It will increase our memory. Our memory will get greater. So by focusing on the clear and knowing nature of the mind, we'll develop greater memory because many of the
제리 생기 세와당지 세리기 다니 생 세부지로 당시 세와 순이 망부 샤트에기 세차디 네그 단대 가랑서 생기 네그게 랑신 세유 차디 가수 세부 차바이나 가수 세부 차니 디강의 네토나 대베 된다 진야다 아니 게 바샤디수 세용야다 미기워다 녀모베 쇼디수 제디마 쇼총은 루그레스 시시네 디라인바 디 주센 카레 라인 디강라 미기 센다 녀모베 센티수 제디 생기 랑신 라 쇼요 마로 sen katsu zangma chadi kuzu sen tingi tima nabu sunri tiri. Sen kurangi rangshin katsu, sen kurangi negagi rangshin di katsu sebu chaba ina tima disu chedi. Da sengi tima disu chedi ma shu chungru reji. Da gie shu ki lu disu chedi tima ma re. Di rangshin zangma di dang, nyandu de tuwa re, gie shu ki sen. Bena shamba dang, niji dang, jiwang hama la soba, dindregi tuanda tinya di, ku 게 쇼기 취수를 차용 거라 디고 냥도지 레토래 연된 디수제의 생 가주 세도 장도 신바이나 연된이 쇼디 공도 피인 거래 생 가주 장도 두디간라 너무 쇼 디수제디 랑신이 마 쇼마 총주에다 내가 미지 워치시네 추 뇽미기 뇽마디마 사간은 도스마 텐도로 디나신지
On the other hand, we're able to reduce our afflictions, such as attachment, our anger, and so forth. So they are slowly reduced. Any kind of negative aspect is reduced, and that's why our memory becomes better. So we have a greater memory of the past, for instance. We may even remember past lives. So in that way, it's extremely beneficial. But Rinpoche says all these benefits, all these advantages of this meditation, I'm just saying what is in the scripture. I'm just repeating like a parrot, whatever is said in the scriptures. Anyway, then Rinpoche continues to say, thus, doing this meditation, focusing in our meditation on the clear and knowing aspect of the mind, well, it helps us in the sense that we reflect on the fact that anything can appear to the mind. When we focus, for instance, on this clear aspect of the mind, well, this will help us. This will help for virtuous minds to increase, for afflictions to decrease, and to have better memory. But why is that? Why is that? Why do we experience these advantages by just focusing on the mind? Well, the reason is the following. All our problems, why do we have problems? We have problems because our mind is obstructed by the afflictions. We experience different kinds of obstructions, different types of afflictions. So they basically obstruct the nature of our mind. Virtuous minds, on the other hand, they work hand in hand with the nature of our mind. They're in harmony with the nature of our mind. Love and compassion, remembering past events, all those are very much in harmony with the actual nature of our mind. Any kind of quality. So if we focus on the nature of our mind, the clarity of our mind, if we focus on that, we're able to bring it more to the forefront. And in that way, more qualities can increase. So it's a bit like mud settling in the water.
생기 자마 센세유 차디 가츠 슈치르 침바 이나레 리닌 제베 리바단 니바 장인 수순 제바단 임바단 마임바 수순 제베 루주 시러기 뉴바디 슈친 루디간라 시러기 뉴바 가츠 슈치르 침바 이나레 게 시러기 뉴바 가츠 슈치르 침바 이나레 디츠지 게 루티수 제디 슈친 루레 가인스 루디간라 게 루차마로 시러기 뉴바다 땡디오로 상주기 센다 니지당 다 게샤와 간데진이나리 쿠기 자오순데 싫어질을 투디기로 그래서 싫어 슈진루디 게샤와 디주 랑신기 슈진루지
And then that way, therefore, if we meditate in such a way, it's a bit like all the obstructions in our mind being reduced, just as when we purify water, then all the mud settles in the mind, or it disappears, and in that way we can actually perceive the clarity of the water. So basically, this kind of meditation is kind of like a cleaning up of the mind. And what also happens if we become more aware of the clear aspect of our mind, that clarity of the mind will increase. Becoming aware of the clear and knowing aspect, in particular, becoming aware of the clarity of the mind, the clarity increases, which in turn increases our wisdom. So wisdom
낸다
that
니가 디 쉐라 마소 아니 다리 디 샤긴다 디샤 다 산이 추정하발 인사유 자기 추정하발 주생 가래라디 산이 표시 니슝아렌도 아니 표시 니슝아 인디간라 렌도 표시 니슝아 디제디 초표야 요래 주제 주바시가 근데 초표야 렌도 제 세장 추정하발라 마수는 소리 추정하발라 마수는 가르치 위에는 야면은 추정하발라 마수지 추주 dimbeji tsunani pashu aridan Canada da tisu tisun tiyu samare kanda nga ruchu nga bala tsu nga ba ni tru de shegas pa tsu dine nga tsu pyosan ru gu re ni chuzi ji de shegas ma du yesa mare sang tu ngi na chuzi dimbas ba du yin chuzi ni yor nga so la sani
So anyway, we've developed this wisdom that is able to differentiate between good and bad, etc. So it increases, and if our wisdom increases, well, then virtuous mind will also increase, because wisdom is the root of all virtues. Therefore, by focusing on the mind, by focusing on the clarity of the mind, wisdom and all other virtues, good qualities will increase. So Rinpoche says, well, I never got the time to talk about this third kind of method while focusing on the mind. I never had this opportunity, but we need to leave it here now. And tomorrow we'll start at 5 Indian time, 5 a.m. Indian time, which is 6:30 Eastern time, Canadian and US time, or Eastern time. So the reason is that tomorrow is the 25th of the last Tibetan month, and that is the day when we offer a certain prayer ceremony. And Rinpoche says that this prayer ceremony starts at 6:30, so we have to start at 5 Indian time. So maybe we have 2 hours, or maybe we have an hour and a half. So Rinpoche has to attend this prayer ceremony, which in terms of the Indian time, we can have class from 5 until 6:30. If the prayer ceremony starts at 6:30, we have an hour and a half. If it starts at 7 Indian time, we'll have 2 hours. So we'll see that tomorrow.
디네 뒤에 가르친도 디 다리 디린도
What is written here?
산이 세상 추정하발 tsu는 깔래요 말어
It's how is it to have class later on. Rinpoche also said for those of you in Canada and the US, you have to go to work, so that doesn't work. So how about 5 o'clock Indian time? Is it okay?
请打字回复我
Is it okay to start tomorrow at 6:30
就是
a.m.
提早1小时，对吧？
Canadian time? Yes.
主要是美国与加拿大那里
Sorry, I think it's PM Canadian or American.
Ah,
Anyway,
yeah,
it's in
it's in
India,
Mada.
it's 5 a.m.
这个嘛呢英国那里还有呢欧洲的有些朋友也在这里但
So wherever you are, in England,
가서 유럽이 단다 가시시
in Europe,
단다
there are some
나수 계주기시 마 뜻이나고 시불랑고시 그래
well, the German translator, she has to get up
Mhm.
really early in the morning, so sorry for that. So anyway, for those of you, wherever you are, tomorrow the session will start at 5 a.m. Indian time. Mhm.
공다다 산이 뒤지래
Come on. So tomorrow, anyway, it's an hour earlier.
아니 다 샤긴다 뒤지
So we'll leave it at that. Thank you.
영어면랑 진행긴다
So Rinpoche will recite a few prayers. May the precious Bodhi mind that has not arisen, arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not decline but increase forevermore. So may all the prayers for the benefit of all sentient beings, may all the prayers of bodhisattvas become become
谢谢荣
true.
姐，
So
晚安。
桑尼姐用。
thank you.